So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So for the past 4 weeks, daily, I have been putting up a poll, taking a look at and asking people to vote against a remake versus the original film and seeing how those polls go. And yeah, it kind of got me chasing a bit of, will anything ever be 100-0 kind of a thing. So what I'm going to do today is take a look at the first week of those polls and have a look at the scores, have a look at my thoughts on it, and where do I fall in the voting? What side do I fall? Do I go with the majority, or am I with the minority on how I would have voted if I was doing that externally? So let's take a look at them. So yeah, welcome back to the channel, everyone. So the reason this started is because about a month ago, I sat down and I watched back to back the 2 Assault on Precinct movies. I started with the remake one and then went to the original. I watched them that way around for a reason, because I knew that the other way around I may not have watched that remake version. And thusly I thought, well, let's put up a poll and see what people think of this. And that led me into a daily thing of releasing a poll daily that's still going now. So get in and vote if you want, and look out for that on a daily basis. So like I said, I'm going to do the first 7 now. Then in a week's time, I'll look at the next 7, next week's worth, and then the next week's worth, and then the next week's worth, until it comes to an end. Until I run out of films to do, or until I get fed up doing it, whichever comes first. So the first film, like I said, I asked about was Assault on Precinct 13. You've got the 1978 classic by John Carpenter, and then you've got the remake from 2005 starring Ethan Hawke and that black fella. His name eludes me. Lawrence Fishburne, that's the name I was going for. So 1978 versus 2005. So this poll here, it received 209 votes, and with a split of 82% to 18% in favour of the original. So 171 people voted for the original, and 38 people voted for the remake. Now, obviously, I can't take into account any sort of troll votes, because I don't know. It might have been that some people voted who have never seen either. It might have been that people have voted that have only seen one of them, this sort of thing. Those sort of factors come into play, and I can't discern against those. I don't know, obviously. Also, I've had to sort of round these up and round them down a little bit, in the sense that sometimes it comes out at about 171.3 people voted. That's how the sort of numbers fall. I know, crazy, but there we go. So I've sort of rounded it up and down to get the even number, and that goes for all of them. So 171 people voted on the original, and 38 people voted upon the 2005 movie. Where do I sit? I sit firmly in the camp of the original movie, the John Carpenter classic. I think it's a great film, seriously speaking. It's a wonderful movie. And the remake, I didn't mind on the rewatch. I enjoyed it. It's not as good as that original, but yeah, it's a decent time was had watching it. So yeah, I mean, that's fair enough, I suppose. That's split completely. So the next one I asked about was True Grit. True Grit, the Western. So you got the 1969 one that stars John Wayne, and you've got the 2011 remake one that stars Jeff Bridges, Matt Damon, I believe. Josh Brolin is in it, correct me if I'm wrong, and Haley Steinfeld in what may have been her first performance, and Oscar worthy it was too. She was very good. Now this one only received 146 votes, so a bit lower. That might point towards the amount of people that have actually seen these films. I mean, the first True Grit, being 1969, is a very old movie. But as a split, we're looking at, of them 146 votes, 58% voted for the 1969 version, while 42% voted for the 2011 one. So you know, almost down the middle there. Okay, top heavier, not top heavy, but a little bit heavier for the original and less for the remake. So that's 85 people voted for the older version, while 61 people voted for the new remake. Now, I actually sit in the remake camp for this one. Yeah, so I go against the trend on this one, because even though I've seen the original True Grit, it's not a film I really ever want to revisit, or a film that I feel the need to own. But I really did like the remake version that was done. Brought it more up to date in a sense, visually, filmmaking wise and all that. And I think it's a great film. I really do think it's a fantastic film. So yeah, so I sit in that camp. And then that brought me to Friday the 13th. There's no rhyme or reason as to why I've done this. I tried to separate horrors at this point, tried to separate Disney films from, you know, something a bit different here and there, that sort of a thing. I tried to, at least. But it seems that a lot of horrors did have remakes. But anyway, so Friday the 13th. So obviously you have the 1980 original that started the franchise off. And you had the 2009 remake starring Jared Padalecki from Supernatural. 235 votes on this one. And with a 70-30 split. 70% in favour for the original movie and 30% in favour of that 2009 remake. And that gave us 164.5 votes to 70.5 votes for the remake. I left that as it is. I didn't round it up because it was a point split completely. That's just the way the voting goes, the poll goes. Anyway, so read it as you will. But it's either 165 for and against 165 against 70. Or 164 against 71, whatever way you want. Okay, so Friday the 13th. I like the Friday the 13th franchise. I like, you know, I grew up on the Friday the 13th movies. I grew up on the Elm Street, Chucky, those sort of things. So I have a soft spot for Friday the 13th. That being said, I don't ever revisit the original Friday the 13th film, and I haven't done for a long, long time. So as I'm sat here recording this and talking, I would probably put my vote into the remake version, simply because the remake is Jason Voorhees. Jason Voorhees is there front and centre of this thing, and that's what I like about the Friday the 13th films. So that original isn't a Jason Voorhees film. You know, his mother's the killer. He comes at the end. So it was the Jason Voorhees character, monster, creature, person that I really liked. So without actually giving that original one a rewatch, and if I did alongside the remake, I might change my mind. But sat here now talking and recording, I'm in that you know, lower camp, shall we say. That's 70%, or that 70 people that voted. I'm with you on that one. Next up, we go to a disaster flick, being the Poseidon Adventure. You've got 1972 original version, Poseidon Adventure, and the remake just simply called Poseidon. 267 votes on this one. Part of the reason for choosing this film is because I recently watched the remake one, because it came out from Arrow Video. So 76% of people voted for the 72 version, while 24% voted for the 2006 version. That's 203 votes against 64 votes in favour of the original. Now, like I said, it might be that some people haven't seen the original. They've only seen the remake, so they vote the remake. They may not have seen both to actually make that assessment of which one is better. So they're just choosing the one that they've seen. Now, I enjoy both films. I do. I enjoy the remake one. I enjoy the original one. But voting-wise, I would give it to the original over the remake. The original is a classic. It's a really good film. Gene Hackman stars therein. You know, Kurt Russell's in the remake. He's fantastic. Even Josh Lucas is actually pretty good in it. And I don't usually like him in much of stuff. So, but there we go. He's pretty good in that one. So yeah, so I'm in the original version camp for that one. And then we have another John Carpenter movie, The Thing, or The Thing from Another World. The Thing from Another World was the name of the 1951 original movie. Obviously, it came out at that sort of era of 1950s American sci-fi that very much played into paranoia and all this sort of stuff with Roswell going on and stuff like that. So you got that, and then obviously John Carpenter in 1982 done a remake of the movie simply called The Thing that flopped on release. Didn't do very well in the cinema. It was panned. And then over time, it really garnered a following, and now is considered a classic movie, and rightly so. It's a very strong film, far different than the original. You know, in the original, the creature looks like a Frankenstein-esque kind of monstrosity, and here it is, well, whoever it wants to be, isn't it? So that had 298 votes, right? And it went 8% in favour of the original and 92% in favour of the remakes. That's only 24 people voted for the original version and 274 people voted for the John Carpenter remake. What camp do I sit in with that one? It's the remake camp. Come on, it's got to be. You know, the John Carpenter film is a classic. It is. I do have the original. I enjoy the original, but come on. Come on. Is the Blob. Yeah, the Blob. The big gelatinous jelly-like creature. So another film, you know, that sort of came from that era of American paranoia for aliens and all that sort of thing. 1958, the original was released, and we had a remake in 1989. 221 votes on this one, with 28% in favour of the original and 72% voting for that 1989 remake. 62 people against 159 in favour of 159 over 62 in favour of that 1989 remake. 1989, I was about 12 years old. Okay, maybe 13. Clearly, it was a film that I saw at the time. It was a film that I really enjoyed. It's a film that I would have enjoyed far more than the original. So much so, I think the original I've probably not seen since the days of TV, when I was much younger than that. Even the remake, even though I have actually got it on physical media, it's not a film that I've sat and watched in some considerable time. So a re-evaluation of the two is required, most definitely. But as I'm sat here now, I'm with you 159 people voting on that remake. And then that brings us to King Kong. Now, this voting went a little bit different because I actually included 3 versions of the film. Originally, I was going to go with the 1933 film versus the 2005 Peter Jackson version. But then I thought, you know what's going to happen? Some people are going to say, oh, the 1976 one in the comments. So I included the 1976 one as well. So the 3 films, the 1933 original classic, that is a classic movie. It's, you know, what it done for cinema is astounding. The special effects at the time, the stop motion. I mean, it's a lovely film. I really love it. It's nearly 100 years old. Isn't that crazy? And then you have the 1976 one, which, to be fair, I've not seen that often, not visited it that much. I remember it just in dribs and drabs. Then we have the 2005 Peter Jackson CGI fest of an extraordinary length of a King Kong movie with Jack Black in it, of all people. 293 votes, split 3 ways. So you had 48% of the votes against that 1933 original, 13% against the 76, and 39% for the 2005 Peter Jackson King Kong. That's 140 people voting for 1933 only 38 people voting for 1976 and 114 people voting for 2005. I would like to have seen what would have happened had I taken the 1976 one out of the equation and where those other 38 votes would fall. Because, to be fair, 140 to 114, you know, it's not far off. It's not far off. Almost a 50 split down the middle, with them just a little bit out, if that makes sense. Okay, so this is a difficult one for me because, honestly, I would probably say the 2005 version is my go-to version of the film. I think it's great. I know some of the special effects are a bit thingy around that dinosaur run and things like that, but I really enjoy the film. But that's not to detract from that 1933 classic, which is a film that I do have in my collection and hold in high regard because of what it done for cinema and for the advancements of technology and this sort of a thing. It's a superb film, and I feel bad going that way for the 2005 one, but that's the one that I would generally sit down and watch and put on the most. So I've got to go with that kind of a feeling for it, but not to detract from that first one. And yeah, so that's kind of where I sit. I just wanted to sit down and do a video looking at these results, talking about these polls and how they turned out, my thoughts on them and where exactly I sit. And in a week's time, I'll be back with another one of these, looking at the next 7 films and my thoughts on them and where I sit in these polls. So thank you to everyone who voted. If you haven't got in on the voting yet, keep an eye out on a daily basis. I put up a poll in my post section. Today's one, as I'm recording, I've put up is Judge Dredd versus Dredd, the Sylvester Stallone original versus that Carl Urban remake. How will that one fall? Go and take a look. Maybe look back and stick a vote in on the others and see if it alters anything. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you later.